In the vibrant village of Zamari, where the air buzzed with the hum of market traders and the laughter of children, lived a girl named Aisha. She was the only daughter of Alhaji Musa, the wealthiest merchant in the region. Aisha's family lived in the grandest house in the village, with walls painted in bright colors and gates made of polished iron. She had everything a child could wish for: beautiful dresses, gold bracelets, and even her own red bicycle. But Aisha was not like the other children in the village. She was spoiled and proud, convinced that her family's wealth made her better than everyone else. Instead of using her good fortune to be kind and generous, she used it to make others feel small. At school, Aisha was known for her sharp tongue and mean jokes. If a child wore torn clothes, she would loudly ask, "Is this the latest fashion in Zamari?" When Halima, a quiet girl, brought her lunch wrapped in a banana leaf, Aisha sneered, "Couldn't your family afford a proper plate?" Halima, embarrassed, hid her face and went to eat alone. During recess, Aisha loved to show off her red bicycle, the only one in the entire village. "Be careful not to touch it," she would warn the other children. "It's worth more than your entire house." Sometimes, she would deliberately ride close to them, making them jump out of the way and laugh at their startled faces. Her disrespect wasn't limited to her classmates. At the marketplace, she often belittled the traders. "These fruits look so cheap," she would exclaim, even when they were fresh and ripe. She never said "please" or "thank you," and if someone didn't respond to her demands quickly enough, she would snap her fingers impatiently. One day, Aisha's cruelty reached its peak. The village was hosting a festival, and the children were rehearsing a dance to perform at the event. Aisha decided she wanted to lead the dance, even though she hadn't attended the practice sessions. When the other children protested, she shouted, "Do you know who I am? My father is paying for this festival. If you don't let me lead, I'll tell him to cancel it." Frightened, the children gave in, and Aisha led the dance. But because she didn't know the steps, the performance was a mess, and the audience was disappointed. Instead of apologizing, Aisha blamed the other children. "You're all terrible dancers," she said. "You embarrassed me." As the days went by, more and more villagers grew tired of Aisha's behavior. Her parents, though kind-hearted, were too lenient with her. "She's just a child," her father would say. "She'll grow out of it." But Aisha didn't grow out of it. She grew worse. One afternoon, Aisha decided to take her bicycle into the forest path. Her mother warned her, "Stay on the main path, Aisha. The forest path can be dangerous." But Aisha rolled her eyes and said, "I know what I'm doing, Mama. Don't worry about me." She pedaled confidently into the forest path, ignoring her mother's advice. The deeper she went, the darker and quieter it became. The sunlight barely reached the ground, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the occasional chirp of a bird. Suddenly, her bicycle hit a rock, and she tumbled to the ground. Her knee was scraped, and her dress was torn. "Stupid forest," she shouted, kicking at the dirt. She picked up her bicycle, but when she tried to ride it, she realized the chain had come off. Frustrated and scared, she sat down and began to cry. Just then, she heard footsteps. Looking up, she saw Danjuma, one of the poorest boys in the village. Aisha had often teased him about his patched clothes and bare feet, calling him names like Rag Boy. "What happened, Aisha?" Danjuma asked kindly. "My bicycle broke," And I don't know how to get home, she said, wiping her tears. Danjuma looked at her scraped knee and tore a piece of cloth from his shirt to bandage it. Don't worry, he said. I'll help you. Together, they walked back to the village. Along the way, Danjuma told her stories to keep her mind off her fear. Aisha, who had always seen him as beneath her, was surprised by his kindness and courage. When they reached the edge of the village, Aisha stopped and looked at him. Why did you help me? She asked. I've been so mean to you. Danjuma smiled. My mother taught me to treat others the way I want to be treated. I couldn't leave you in the forest, no matter what. His words stayed with Aisha that night as she lay in bed. She thought about all the times she had hurt others and how Danjuma had shown her kindness despite it all. The next day, Aisha went to school with a different attitude. She apologized to Musa for teasing him about his shoes and offered him a pair from her own collection. She helped Halima carry her books and shared her lunch with her. Slowly, the other children began to see a new side of Aisha. At the marketplace, she started helping the traders arrange their goods and spoke to them respectfully. These fruits look delicious, she said to one seller, bringing a smile to his face. Over time, Aisha became known for her kindness and generosity. The villagers began to call her Aisha the Kind, and she felt happier than ever. She never forgot Danjuma's words, treat others the way you want to be treated. From that day on, Aisha used her family's wealth not to boast, but to help others. She had learned that true riches came not from gold or possessions, but from kindness and love. There lived a young princess named Tamar in the land of Konda, where the sun shone brightly, and baobab trees swayed gently in the breeze. Tamar was beautiful, with shiny black hair and a crown that sparkled like the stars. But Tamar had one big problem: she thought she was better than everyone else. She never shared her toys as a child, and as she grew older, she became even prouder. One morning, Tamar was strolling in the royal garden, admiring her reflection in a small mirror she always carried. Suddenly, an old woman appeared from behind a tree. Her clothes were tattered, and her walking stick looked as old as the hills. "Good morning, Princess Tamar," the woman said, her voice kind and soft. Tamar frowned. "What do you want, old woman?" The woman held out her hand, revealing a bracelet made of gold and beads that glowed in the sunlight. "I bring you a gift, princess. This is no ordinary bracelet. It will show your true heart. If you are kind, it will bring you joy and strength. But if you are selfish, it will bring you trouble." Tamar snatched the bracelet without saying thank you. She placed it on her wrist, admiring how it sparkled. But she didn't believe the old woman's story. "What silly magic! A bracelet cannot judge me," Tamar said, waving her hand dismissively. The old woman smiled. "Time will tell, princess. Time will tell." Then, like smoke in the wind, she disappeared. The next day, Tamar decided to show off her new bracelet to her servants and villagers. She marched through the market, her head held high. A little girl ran up to her, holding a small basket of mangoes. "Princess Tamar," the girl said shyly, "my family is hungry. Can you help us?" Tamar wrinkled her nose. "Go away, child. I don't have time for beggars." As she turned to leave, the bracelet on her wrist tightened. Tamar gasped, clutching her arm as the bracelet began to glow red. "What is happening?" she cried. The villagers whispered among themselves. "The bracelet is angry," said an old man. "It can feel her pride." But Tamar ignored them, storming back to the palace. "This stupid bracelet," she shouted, pulling at it, but it wouldn't come off no matter how hard she tried. Days passed, and strange things kept happening. Tamar demanded the palace cook prepare her favorite soup, but when she tasted it, it turned bitter. She ordered new dresses, but every thread itched her skin. The bracelet grew heavier each time she acted selfishly. One night, Tamar had a dream. The old woman appeared, her eyes glowing like fireflies. "Tamar," the woman said, "your heart is full of pride. Until you learn kindness, the bracelet will not let you rest." Tamar woke up sweating. She looked at the bracelet, now dull and heavy, and felt a pang of fear. The drought came shortly after. The fields dried up, and the rivers turned to thin streams. The villagers came to the palace gates, pleading for help. "Princess Tamar," an old man called, "our children are starving. Please share the palace's grain with us." Tamar frowned. "The grain is for royalty, not for villagers. Go find your own food." As soon as she spoke, the bracelet grew tighter, and Tamar screamed in pain. She ran to her room, slamming the door. "Why does this keep happening?" she cried. That night, Tamar had another dream. This time, she saw herself walking through the village. Children were crying, and their parents looked weak. She saw her field overflowing with grain while the villagers had nothing. A voice echoed in her mind, "A leader's true power lies in her kindness." Tamar woke up with tears in her eyes. She felt a strange feeling in her chest, a mix of guilt and determination. The next morning, Tamar went to the granary. She ordered the guards to open the gates and invited the villagers in. "Take what you need," she said softly. The villagers hesitated, surprised by her change. "Is this a trick?" one asked. "No trick," Tamar said, her voice trembling. "I was wrong. I should have helped you sooner." As the villagers filled their baskets, the bracelet on Tamar's wrist began to glow softly. For the first time, it felt warm instead of heavy. Tamar spent the next few days working with the villagers. She carried water, planted seeds, and even sang songs with the children. At first, the work was hard, but she began to enjoy it. One evening, after a long day of helping in the fields, Tamar sat under a baobab tree, watching the sunset. The bracelet glowed brighter than ever before, and suddenly, the old woman appeared again. "Tamar," she said, her voice proud, "you have learned the lesson of the bracelet. Kindness is the greatest treasure of all." Tamar bowed her head. "I understand now. A princess must care for her people, not just herself." The old woman smiled and waved her hand. The bracelet transformed into a band of pure gold with a single shining gem. "This is now a symbol of your kind heart, Tamar. Wear it proudly." The old woman disappeared once more, leaving Tamar alone with her thoughts. From that day on, Tamar became a beloved ruler. The villagers trusted her, and the land of Konda grew prosperous again. The story of Princess Tamar and the enchanted bracelet was told for generations, reminding everyone that true strength comes from a kind heart. The end. Once upon a time, in a quiet village surrounded by lush green hills and a sparkling river, there lived a girl named Simi. Simi had a voice as pure as a mountain stream. Whenever she sang, the birds perched on trees to listen, and the village children would gather around her, enchanted. But Simi's life wasn't as magical as her voice. She lived with her Uncle Bulu, a humble fisherman who worked tirelessly to provide for both of them. While her uncle loved her deeply, he often worried. "Simi," he would say, "your singing is lovely, but it won't fill our bellies or pay for the roof over our heads. Focus on your chores, my dear." Simi would nod, but her heart was set on a dream. She wanted to sing for the world, to touch people's hearts and inspire them with her melodies. But for now, her songs were only heard by the river and the wind. Life wasn't easy for Simi in the village. She was often mocked by a group of wealthy girls led by the chief's daughter, Amoka. Amoka had a powerful voice and loved to boast about her talents. She and her friends had tutors, fancy instruments, and fine clothes. "Oh, look at poor Simi," Amoka would jeer. "Do you think anyone will listen to you sing in those rags?" Simi would lower her head, hurt but silent. She found solace by the riverbank, where she could sing freely without judgment. Her voice would echo across the water, carrying her hopes and dreams. Little did she know, her songs had an audience far more powerful than she imagined. The river goddess, a regal figure who guarded the waters, had been listening. Hidden beneath the river's surface, she would rise quietly to watch Simi sing. The goddess loved the girl's voice and the honesty in her songs. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Simi sat by the river, singing a song about her dreams. She didn't notice the water rippling unnaturally until a soft voice broke through her melody. "Simi," the voice called, gentle yet commanding. Startled, Simi turned and gasped. Standing before her was the river goddess, tall and radiant with beautiful grey afro hair. Her presence was both comforting and awe-inspiring. Who are you?" Simi stammered. "I am the river goddess," she replied, her voice like a soothing melody. "I've heard your songs, child. They are filled with hope, love, and courage. Why do you sing alone by the river?" Simi's eyes filled with tears. "No one believes in me, my lady. They mock me because I'm poor. They say I'll never amount to anything." The goddess smiled kindly. "True talent comes from the heart, not riches. You are destined for greatness, Simi. I will help you." The goddess reached into the river, and when her hand emerged, she held a golden necklace with a glowing pendant shaped like a musical note. "This necklace carries the magic of the river. Wear it when you sing. It will enhance your voice, filling it with the power to touch every heart that hears it. But remember, its magic will only work if you sing with honesty and love." Simi's hands trembled as she took the necklace. "Thank you," she whispered. The goddess nodded. "Use it wisely, my child. And never stop believing in yourself." With that, she disappeared into the water, leaving behind only gentle ripples. The next day, the village buzzed with excitement. The king had announced a grand singing competition to celebrate the kingdom's anniversary. The winner would receive a treasure chest of gold, a house near the palace, and the honor of becoming the royal singer. Amoka and her friends were thrilled. They spent hours practicing with their tutors, confident that one of them would win. Amoka was especially determined to prove she was the best. Simi overheard the news while running an errand. Her heart raced. Could this be her chance? She touched the golden necklace beneath her blouse and decided she had to try, no matter what anyone said. "I can do this," she whispered to herself. I just need to believe. In the days leading up to the competition, Simi practiced tirelessly by the river. The golden necklace glowed softly each time she sang, filling her with confidence. Her voice grew stronger, more powerful, and more enchanting with every note. Uncle Bolio noticed the change in her. "Simi," he said one evening, "you've been singing more than ever. What's going on?" Simi hesitated but decided to tell him everything about the river goddess and the necklace. At first, her uncle was skeptical, but when she sang a song for him, tears filled his eyes. "My dear," he said, his voice trembling, "you have a gift. Go and show the world what you can do." The day of the competition arrived. The village square was transformed into a grand stage. Colorful banners fluttered in the wind, and the villagers gathered in excitement. Contestants performed one by one, each showcasing their talents. Amoka's performance was bold and dramatic, earning loud applause. She smirked, confident of her victory. Finally, it was Simi's turn. As she stepped onto the stage, murmurs rippled through the crowd. "What is she doing here?" someone whispered. Amoka laughed loudly. "Poor Simi thinks she can compete with me. How ridiculous." Simi ignored the whispers and held her head high. She touched the necklace, took a deep breath, and began to sing. Her voice soared like a bird in flight, sweet and powerful. The golden necklace glowed brighter with every note, and the crowd fell silent, mesmerized. Her song told a story of hope, resilience, and the power of believing in oneself. As she finished, there was a moment of silence before the crowd erupted into cheers. Even the king rose to his feet, clapping enthusiastically. The king stepped forward, smiling warmly. "Simi, your voice is a treasure. You have won this competition, and with it, the honor of becoming the royal singer." Tears streamed down Simi's face as she accepted the prize. The villagers who once doubted her now cheered her name. Even Amoka stood speechless, realizing that true talent couldn't be overshadowed by wealth or arrogance. The river goddess watched from the water, a proud smile on her face. She whispered, "Well done, Simi. Well done." From that day on, Simi and her uncle lived comfortably, and her songs brought joy to people far and wide. She never forgot the river goddess's kindness and continued to sing from her heart, inspiring everyone who heard her. The moral of the story is true talent shines brightest when it comes from the heart. Believe in yourself, and you can achieve anything. Kofi was a little boy who lived in a quiet village called Ebiri. He loved playing under the sun with his friends. Every day, they ran around, jumping and laughing. Kofi always noticed his shadow on the ground, copying everything he did. If he waved, the shadow waved too. If he jumped, the shadow jumped. It made him laugh every time. One sunny afternoon, Kofi's friends were busy helping their families, so he decided to play alone near the edge of the village. This was where the big forest stood. The forest was dark and mysterious, and everyone in Ebiri knew the stories about it. "Do not go near the forest," his mother always said. "Strange things live there." But Kofi's curiosity always got the better of him. What could be so scary about some trees, he thought. He wandered closer, his bare feet kicking up soft dirt. He played a game of catch with a small stone, tossing it into the air and catching it as it came down. Suddenly, a small yellow bird with bright feathers flew down from the trees. It hopped close to Kofi, tilting its head. "Kofi," the bird chirped in a soft voice. Kofi gasped. "You can talk." The bird flapped its wings. "Come closer. I have something to show you." Kofi hesitated. His mother's warning echoed in his head. But he was curious. The bird hopped toward the trees, its feathers glinting in the sunlight. Kofi followed, stepping carefully into the forest. As soon as he stepped under the tall trees, everything changed. The air felt cool, and the sunlight disappeared. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Then, behind him, he heard a rustling sound. Kofi turned quickly, but nothing was there. That's when he noticed something strange. His shadow was gone. He looked around in confusion. The ground beneath him was empty, even though the sunlight peeked through the trees. Kofi spun in circles, shouting, "Shadow! Where are you?" But no answer came. The yellow bird returned, landing on a low branch. "Your shadow has been taken," it said. "Taken? By who?" Kofi asked, his voice trembling. "The shadow spirit," the bird replied. "It steals shadows from curious children who wander too far into the forest." Kofi's heart sank. "How can I get it back?" The bird tilted its head. "If you are brave, you can follow me to the land of shadows. There, you will face 3 challenges. If you pass them, your shadow will be returned. But be warned, the shadow spirit is clever and loves to play tricks." Kofi didn't feel brave, but he loved his shadow. He couldn't live without it. "I'll do it," he said firmly. The bird led him deeper into the forest, where the trees grew taller and the air became colder. Soon, they arrived at a dark cave with a swirling mist at its entrance. "This is the doorway to the land of shadows," the bird said. "You must go alone from here. Remember, trust your heart and never give up." Kofi took a deep breath and stepped inside. The cave was dark and damp, with strange whispers echoing around him. He followed a faint light until he entered a large open space. In the middle stood his shadow, trapped inside a glass box. A tall, thin figure with glowing red eyes stood beside it. "Who dares enter my land?" boomed the shadow spirit. "It's me, Kofi," he said, trying not to sound afraid. "I want my shadow back." The shadow spirit laughed a deep and echoing sound. "To win your shadow, you must pass my 3 challenges. Fail, and your shadow stays with me forever." Kofi nodded, his heart pounding. "I'm ready." The shadow spirit raised its long, bony finger and pointed to the ground. A glowing stone appeared. "For the first challenge, solve this riddle. I shine bright but have no flame. I hide during the day but rule the night. What am I?" Kofi thought hard. He remembered the nights in his village when he and his friends sat outside under the sky. "The moon," he said confidently. The shadow spirit nodded slowly. "You are clever, little boy. But the next challenge will test your wits even more." It led Kofi to a wide river. The water sparkled, but there was no bridge or boat. "You must cross this river without getting wet," the shadow spirit said. Kofi looked at the water and then around the riverbank. He saw large leaves floating near the edge. He picked up one of the biggest leaves and gently placed it in the water. Carefully, He stepped onto it and used a long stick to paddle across. When he reached the other side, the shadow spirit appeared, looking impressed. You are smart, but the last challenge will test your courage. For the third challenge, the shadow spirit pointed to a tall tree. Its branches stretched high into the sky, and at the very top was a single golden fruit. Climb the tree and bring me the fruit, it said. Kofi looked at the tree and felt nervous. The branches were thin and slippery, and the tree was taller than any he had seen. But he remembered his mother's words, when things get hard, don't stop. Keep trying. He grabbed the first branch and started climbing. The higher he went, the harder it became. His arms ached, and the wind made the tree sway. At one point, he almost slipped. But he held on tight and kept going. Finally, Kofi reached the top and picked the golden fruit. Carefully, he climbed back down and handed it to the shadow spirit. The shadow spirit stared at him for a long moment. Then it smiled. You have passed all my challenges. You are brave, clever, and determined. You deserve your shadow. It opened the glass box, and Kofi's shadow jumped out, happily rejoining him. Thank you, Kofi said, his heart full of joy. The shadow spirit nodded. Remember, little boy, curiosity is good but must be balanced with caution. Kofi left the cave and returned to the forest. The yellow bird was waiting for him. Well done, Kofi, it said. You are wiser now. Tell others what you have learned. Kofi smiled. I will. When he got back to his village, the sun was shining brightly. His shadow danced beside him as he walked. From that day on, Kofi listened to his mother's warnings and stayed away from the forest. But he never forgot the lessons he learned in the land of shadows, to be brave, to think carefully, and to always trust his heart. The end.